and it was gone.
Here's some important design considerations. So as you can see, I've ground the knife blade. It's a flat grind, and I put a little jimping on the top of it, and it really turned out nice. I'm sorry that it's a little bit fuzzy, but the thing that I've been explaining about the backspacer is the backspacer is made out of the same material as the blade. So just like they are exactly parallel, which is what you want in a folding knife. You want everything parallel and flat. And this is 3/32 01 tool steel. It's flat ground, it's precision ground. You can see it's 93 thousandths of an inch. And so what's going to happen is when I put washers on to the blade, here's two of the washers together, and once those washers are on the blade, the blade is actually going to be thicker than the backspacer. So as you can see, 16 thousandths, because each of my washers is 8 thousandths of an inch thick. And so my backspacer with the two washers is going to have to be thicker than the blade and the washers so that it's parallel. So this is what I meant by either have to make another backspacer, or I have to shim it by putting the same material back on the backspacer. And for this tutorial, what I'm going to do is make another backspacer, because that's going to be the simplest to show everybody. And then I'm just showing two here in the bend. You want the bend in the spring to equal the size, a little more than the size of the blade and the two washers. That's how you know how much to bend it. You don't want to overbend it, or obviously underbend it either. So that's just very important, and thought I'd better explain that in making a liner lock folder. This liner lock is going to need washers, and you can buy washers for liner locks pretty well anywhere that sells folding knife parts. But why buy them if you can make them? I operate under a principle that says, if I can afford something, I buy the best I can. If I can't afford it, I make it. And if I can't make it, I do without. What you're looking at right here is a little punch set that I made for making my own washers. I looked at buying these punches, and you can get cheap ones, but ones that really work well are quite expensive. So I thought, you know what? I can't afford it, so I'm going to make one. And I made this little punch out of 01 tool steel, and then just some drill rod, actually just drills that I snapped off and used as punches. So as you can see by this little tool, it's just made out of two pieces of 01 tool steel. And here's the punch for the outside diameter of the washer, and here's the punch for the inner hole, which is 3/16 to fit my pivot. And I just had a scrap of 01, and you can see I didn't even trim it square, just left that little triangle part on as a handle, and drilled this out, the 3/16 hole and the outside diameter, and then I have these little holes to fit these hardened dowel pins, 1/8 inch hardened dowel pins, and I have this little piece of pignut hickory. You always want to use a piece of wood under a punch like this so you don't damage your punch face. And here's how it goes together. It just sits on top like that, and I drilled these together so the holes were nice and straight. And then the 3/16 pin is just ground real flat so the edges are sharp, goes down through there. And you just hit it like that with some material inside that you stick in, shim material. And then this bigger one cuts the outside diameter of that. So this is really a cool little tool. Cost me next to nothing to make. I used the drill to bore the hole, and then just snapped the back of the drill bit off and ground it flat to have my punch. Let's see this tool in action. So here I have it on a little piece of railroad track that is my bench anvil, and I'm just inserting a piece of shim stock in here and got it all set up. Now I'll put my 3/16 punch in this little hole, and I'll just give it a sharp rap with this hammer. And as you can see, it just knocks the little slug out. And I'm just going to move this forward, and I have a tool that will align this, but what I've found is you can align it pretty well by eye and just have the 3/16 hole right in the middle of the washer. Now I stick this punch in on top of it and give it a hard blow. Bang! One shot. And then I'm going to tip it just to tap it out a little bit, being real careful not to damage my punch. And there you can see that I've made a perfect washer out of shim stock. And you should use phosphor bronze, because phosphor bronze can be kind of heat treated or to a spring sort of temper. And then phosphor bronze has its own natural lubricant in it. And then what I do is just take a piece of sandpaper, lay it flat on top of my bench anvil, and just rub the burr off onto a piece of sandpaper so that it's nice and parallel and that burr isn't there. This just takes a second, and you have yourself a really nice washer ready to go into your folder. Now again, I think some people will say, why don't you just buy that? You know, they're inexpensive. Hey, what's the fun in that? If you can make a neat tool like this, I heat treated it so that it's nice and hard and it will last a long time. And I'll tell you what, it's a lot funner for me to make my own washers, to be able to stamp them out of bronze. I don't know, it's just real rewarding and fun. This is not difficult to make. And if you can make a knife, you can make a little punch set like this. And sometime, I don't know, maybe I'll drop some little plans and you can get them as a Google Doc, or really if you just look at what I did and mimic that, you can make this very easily. To bend the spring of this knife, I put the liner into my vise and tighten it up. And then I'm going to take a needle nose set of vice grips, and I'm just going to bend this carefully. You don't want to bend it too much at the tip or too much at the back. You want a nice, even bend the length of the spring if you can. And it's springy, but if you overbend it carefully and slowly, making sure again that you keep it even and moving the vice grips down the spring so I don't get it too much at the top, and you overbend it like this carefully, you can keep doing that until you get the amount of the bend that you want in the spring. And I'm trying to bend it as about the width of the blade and the two washers, so that it would spring over actually almost against the other liner if the blade wasn't there. So I always do this thinking, man, that spring's going to break off or something like that, but this titanium is really tough. 6L4V is the alloy that you want to use because it has this property. If this was commercially pure titanium, the spring would bend immediately over and there would be no spring to it, or very little spring to it anyway. But this is an amazing alloy, and it's the reason we use it for liner locks. So the first thing I want to check is to make sure that I didn't overbend or underbend the spring. And so I'm just going to stack the blade and the two washers against it. And looks real good. That's just how I want it to be. And I can always adjust it later when I do assembly, but it's nice and even there, as you can see. And pretty happy with that. So I put the pivot pin through with one of the washers, put the blade on, and then put the other washer on top of the blade so that the blade is completely stood off from the scales with these little washers. They fit real good. Now I'll have to compress the spring against the blade to get this together. And the backspacer is not the right size yet, but this is perfect for making the knife and just checking it out. And so I'll assemble this and screw this back together and see where we're at. Ah, son, now that is looking like a knife. You can see that I've got it together. And one of the most important things is that I still have room to time the lock to the blade. And so you can see I've just got a little bit of the blade there that the bottom of the blade, I'm going to grind it at an angle, and then the spring will spring over to be able to lock it. And it'll just be right in there. Take that off at an angle, and we will have a knife that's able to lock. I'm not going to do it right now because I want to do that when we have the wider backspacer in there. But this gives me a chance to just really check out the function of the knife. And it's already a huge difference because the washers are there. So we're looking good. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the process so far, and I'd love to see some of my knife making friends and people that I don't know yet that'll be my friends making some liner locks. And love to see VRs posted of people, if you start one or do a work in progress. And then also, I hope you enjoyed looking at how to make one of those little washer punches. Not hard to make, and you can make a lot nicer one than you can buy. A lot more precision. Again, and I'll try to keep this moving right along. It's kind of been nice. I've had time in the evenings to work on the knife and to do some videoing, so I'll keep it up. The handle material that I ordered came for this knife in the mail, and I'm real tickled about that. So a quick shout out to my dear friend Noxie82. If you look, you probably see this a lot of times in my videos. This is a walking stick that he made for me, the wee Northern Irish lad that he is. And I always treasure this, and has a place of honor right here. But go over to Noxie82's channel, subscribe, and everyone send him a message. He's been he's had a job and not real happy with it, and he's applied for a job and went for an interview, and I heard today that he got the job. So if you show the Noxilator a little love, that would be totally cool. Just like PM him, congratulations Noxie, you're the man, something like that. Just show him some YouTube love. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this so far and this little series, and stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching. Hey, I'm back for one quick commercial announcement. As you saw in the beginning of my video, I made a little remark about the music in this video. It's by a very gifted artist from the UK who plays homemade cigar box guitar, amazing blues. I mean, born in the UK, sounds like he's from, the Mississippi Delta or something like that. But awesome guy. He's given me permission to use cuts of his music in my videos. And if you appreciate these videos, I'm going to ask you to do me a huge favor as a way of saying thank you to me and thank you to him for letting me use his music. Would you please go to his Facebook page? I'll put a link to it in the description below this video, and probably have to click more and then you'll see it. But would you do me this favor? Would you click on that, go to his Facebook page, click like, and also tell him Tim sent me. And I just appreciate his generosity so much because of how funky copyright license and all that is, and he's given me permission. So if you would do that for me, I'd appreciate it. Thanks a lot.